Hello and welcome to another episode of AI Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Today we are revisiting Apple products and how their new line of ARM processors could be really productive for machine learning in the future. As many of you know, Apple completely changed the game last year when they released their ARM processor for the M1 MacBook. I've done all kinds of videos with the M1 MacBook Air and showed how they perform with the TensorFlow, PyTorch, and other libraries. If you're at all interested in the performance of the M1, check out that series of other videos. They're pretty cool, and it shows that the M1 ARM technology definitely makes a big improvement in machine learning performance compared to previous MacBooks. However, the performance can still be bested by some mid-level NVIDIA graphics cards. So if you're a die-hard Apple fan and want to do machine learning, the M1's a great choice. However, just know that NVIDIA could help your training times a little bit. Apple themselves noted that the M1 MacBook is up to 15 times faster than previous MacBooks, and this is for machine learning performance. Apple is coming out with a new line of products. Each year they tend to release a new version of whatever have you, whether it's the iPhone, the Mac, or the MacBook. They release new versions of these products every year. This year is no exception, and they are providing some initial details on the next iteration of the M1. We haven't received performance improvement numbers from Apple yet in terms of how much faster this year's will be over last year's. However, we do have a rough idea of how many cores are going to be provided, so we can make some estimates on performance improvements. The discussion on that's going to be towards the end of the video. All right, let's talk about what the M1 MacBook did right so that we can see if the next version of this laptop and the number of cores it's going to have is going to be pushing it in the right direction. So the version that I tested of the M1 had 8 CPU cores and 8 GPU cores. They also had these cores that they called neural cores, which from what most people could kind of tell, mostly helped in the inference process, so having a model that's already trained and then using that model to predict on new data points. It did not appear that these neural cores had a huge impact on training times at all. That is one thing that we're really hoping that Apple does differently with this new release is sort of describe in more technical detail how these cores sort of relate to machine learning performance rather than just say you get 8 GPU cores or 16 GPU cores, whichever number you get, and then you get X number of neural cores and basically good luck. It would be great to kind of have them explain exactly how those are tied and used within the TensorFlow package that they released. When they released the macOS TensorFlow fork of TensorFlow, they really provided pretty much no documentation on how it worked. It was mostly on how to install it. And I remember kind of the early days of when that package was released and people were trying to get it up and running on their M1. Everyone would pretty much have to file an issue in GitHub to get any sort of response from Apple. All right, so we are extremely excited about this next release from Apple. Can't wait to see more details about it, but here's what we know so far. They're presumably calling it the M2, which is not a huge jump from the M1. And based on what I was saying above, the number of GPU cores appear to really closely affect the performance of the TensorFlow macOS library. So the options for those GPU cores are going to be greatly expanded. And one really cool article that I saw on Mac Rumors that I'll link to below in the description said that the specs for the new processor are even more ambitious than what they expected. That's extremely exciting news because Apple made such a huge jump last year and really changed the game with putting ARM processors into a pretty mainstream laptop product. They could really easily kind of sit back and rest on their laurels and kind of rake this for as much as they can. However, it seems like they're really trying to jump ahead each year, and that's just awesome to see from a machine learning hardware standpoint. So the new specs for this M2 processor are going to feature a 10-core CPU, so that's increased from 8 to 10, and they're also going to offer 16 or 32-core GPU options. Increasing the number of GPU cores is going to really expand the parallelization that you're able to do when you train a deep neural network. Perhaps one of my favorite improvements over the M1 that the M2 is going to have RAM configurations up to 64 gigabytes. As a lot of you pointed out in my previous videos, 16 gigabytes, which was the maximum the M1 had, was a huge bottleneck for machine learning. And to really do machine learning on a wide variety of data sets, it's so helpful to have that extra RAM to be able to store your training set. So these new machines are expected to drop and be released later this year. I'm definitely excited to try these out and see how the performance compares to the previous M1 MacBook. So kind of building off of that and showing that they probably will be really ready for release later this year, the manufacturing company that actually will take Apple's design and make it, put it into fruition, is TSMC, so the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They are already working on these chips and producing them as we speak. Apparently they take 3 months to produce, which is wild. It's such a long manufacturing process, and it just shows how much technology is probably being packed onto each one of these. As someone who's really into the hardware aspect of processors and the manufacturing process, I just immediately think of some process engineer in charge of a deposition or an etch who at month 1.5 of that 3-month process makes some tiny mistake and just totally fries a whole batch of these chips that people have been working on for over a month. That would probably be hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single wafer that you just completely destroyed. In summary, we are eagerly awaiting these new M2 processors and cannot wait to get my hands on one and test it out. We are all expecting the performance to improve over the M1, mainly due to the number of cores being increased, the number of RAM configurations available to us. It seems like Apple is really doubling down on their lead and trying to just create the world's best processors. They may still get edged out by NVIDIA. You have to wait for the performance test on that to really see how they stack up. But can't wait for it, and I will keep everyone posted. That's about all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back with you very, very soon for more machine learning and artificial intelligence related content. Make sure to drop a like on this video, as well as subscribe to the channel if you liked it. Have a good day. Bye.